Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Thursday, June 11th meeting of the Ventura County Planning Commission. The first item on the agenda will be the roll call. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner White,
Here?
Commissioner Idukas,
Here.
Commissioner McPhail,
Here.
Commissioner King,
Here.
Commissioner Rodriguez.
Here.
All right, great.
Okay, good. Everybody's here. The next item is the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Will you please join me in saluting our flag?
Okay, it says we're live.
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God.
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item on the agenda is public comments. Do we have any public comments? Okay, the clerk reports no public comments have been received. Will we be sending out an invite to people to submit comments as we did in our last meeting to put the email address on the board?
Yes, I do have that available. I might be slow at the start.
And so later on, we will put that up?
Yes.
Or do we do it now?
We can do it now.
What do you suggest?
You can, Megan, why don't you put it up just to show that? And it will also appear again during the presentation of the item on the agenda.
Okay.
A second, I need to get my slide up. All right. So here is the slide.
So if anyone in the public wishes to make a comment, they can email comments 250 words or less to the email address shown on the board there. Please indicate which agenda item you're concerned about, and once received, our staff will read your comments to the commission. And we will show this later when we get into the particular CUP case we're hearing today. Okay, next item on the agenda. Item 5 is approval of the minutes for May 7th, 2020. Any commissioners wish to discuss this? And by the way, commissioners, if you wave at me, will help me to know to call on you. Commissioner McPhail, unmute yourself and go ahead.
In the minutes, it says that I was something other than the Ag Commissioner during disclosures. It just needs to say Ventura County Agricultural Commissioner enforces seed laws. That's all it needed to say.
Okay, any other concerns or comments from commissioners? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve.
Move approval with that correction.
Second.
Now, is that with Commissioner McPhail's adjustment?
That's what I said. Could
Okay.
you hear it?
No, you're not very loud here. Okay, great.
Okay.
Any questions by anybody?
Who seconded the motion?
Commissioner King.
All right, thank you.
Clerk will call the roll.
Hold on a second. just takes a minute here. Okay, Commissioner White,
Aye.
Commissioner Dukas,
Aye.
Commissioner McPhail,
Aye.
Commissioner King,
Aye.
Commissioner Rodriguez.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, the minutes as amended have been approved. The next item on the agenda, item 6, is a conditional use permit, case number PL 19-0078. And before we ask the case planner, John Kessler, to present it, I would like to do the disclosure so that we can ask questions during the presentation. At this time, I would like to ask each planning commissioner to state on the record whether or not he or she has received any oral or written ex parte communication regarding this agenda item that is not already contained in the record before us on this matter. Please disclose the substance of that information only if that information is not contained in the record before us on this matter. Clerk, please call the roll on that.
Commissioner White,
I have no disclosures.
Commissioner Dukas,
I have no disclosures.
Commissioner McPhail,
No disclosures.
Commissioner King,
No disclosures.
Commissioner Rodriguez.
No disclosures.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Let's proceed with the staff presentation. Calling forward John Kessler. John, take it away.
Thank you, Chair White.
Mr. Chair, we should read into the case number. Oh, you did? Okay.
Chair, did you want to do that or shall I?
It's done, John. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so good morning, Chair White and members of the commission. My name is John Kessler and I am the case planner with the RMA Planning Division. Item before you today is case number PL 19-0078. This item includes a request to grant a conditional use permit for existing Fire Station 57 for a 30-year period, and that your commission authorize minor site improvements. There we go. So first, I'd like to let everyone know who wishes to participate in the hearing that if you would like to submit public comments on this item, please do so at the address shown here. After my presentation, Chair White will announce a short recess to allow any member of the public time to submit their comment. Then we'll advise when the public comment period is closing. Fire station is located at 3356 Somas Road in the unincorporated area of Ventura County. The subject property has a general plan land use designation of existing community and is zoned rural exclusive 1 acre minimum lot size. The project site is comprised of 2 legal lots and is bounded by Somas Road, followed by a commercial and the U.S. Post Office to the west, a single-story commercial office building to the north, and undeveloped open agricultural fields to the south and east. The following slides will show a few photos of the project site. This is a view of the fire station from Somas Road. The existing fire station was established in 1982, which preceded the requirements of a CUP for county facilities. The primary building includes a 3-bay apparatus garage, an office, a bedroom, dorms, kitchen, and a day room. These photos were taken at the rear of the site. It shows the back of the fire station, the back of the primary building at the fire station. And then finally, these photos show existing support equipment for the site. The support equipment includes a emergency backup diesel generator in yellow there, a white diesel fuel tank, and the other structure is an existing 32-foot high hose drying tower. So as I mentioned before, the project before you today is a request that includes that your planning commission grant a conditional use permit for existing Fire Station 57 for a 30-year period, and that your commission authorize minor site improvements, including construction of a single-story ancillary structure and an 82-foot high public safety radio tower. So this slide shows the site plan for the project. For orientation purposes, Somas Road is running north and south and shown on the left of the screen. The existing primary building is located in the center, hatched in gray. Parking will continue to be provided along the north and south side. The southeast corner includes an area to house dry sand, a trash enclosure, and there's a covered storage shed, which is also hatched in gray. If approved, the ancillary structure and public safety radio tower will be located in the northeast corner of the project site and highlighted in blue. So the following two slides are renderings of the proposed project. This slide shows the western elevation of the proposed ancillary structure, which would face Somas Road. This structure would be located at the rear of the project site, as shown by the blue arrow, and would be partially screened by the existing primary building. The structure would include a new single bay apparatus garage, a fitness room, and a communication room to house equipment for the proposed adjacent public safety radio tower. And this slide shows a photo simulation from Somas Road looking northeast at the proposed tower. The actual height of the tower structure would be 60 feet, and with the addition of a 22-foot whip antenna on the top, the overall height would be 82 feet. And of note, a condition of approval is included with the project in Exhibit 6 of the staff report, which would ensure that this tower only be used for the sole purpose of mounting emergency equipment for the provision of public safety and government operations. So as conditioned in Exhibit 6 of the staff report and described in sections C through E, the proposed project is consistent with all applicable general plan policies and the non-coastal zoning ordinance. Staff's recommendation actions are shown here and included in section G of the staff report. We also ask that your commission take into consideration all testimony and evidence provided today. So again, I would like to remind the public or anyone who wishes to comment on the project, please do so at the email address shown here, and I will read it out loud. It's planning.pccomments@ventura.org. One more time, that's planning.pccomments@ventura.org.
Okay, great. Thank you, John. Do any of the commissioners have questions of staff on this item?
Chair White?
Yes, I don't see you, but it sounds like Commissioner Idukas.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Kessler, I understand that you did get comments, written comments via email from a MAC member. Could you read that to us?
Sure, thank you, Commissioner Dukas. Thank you for the reminder. So I did receive one comment from the public. This was received on June 2nd, and I will read it out loud. It's from Mr. Pat Richards. The email states as follows. First of all, thank you for the notice that I received a few days ago regarding the proposed CUP for improvements to the county fire station number 57 in Somis. I have the following comments. Okay. 1, the project description does not say how long the CUP will remain valid for. In such as this is a critical public facility, I would encourage the planning director to extend the CUP long into the future. 2, the proposed 60-foot high wireless communication public safety radio tower should not be used for commercial purposes, but only for the county fire department or other county departments. Number 3, in order to help blend into the background, it is recommended that the tower have a light, flat gray finish. This should include all attachments to the tower. And number 4, will all of the improvements be completed at one time, or will they be constructed over several years? Please include my comments into the public record. Thank you.
Following up, if I may, Chair.
Please go ahead.
Following up on that, I do believe that the CUP length is 30 years.
That's correct, Commissioner, 30 years.
Okay, so his first point is part of what's being recommended, right?
That's correct.
Additionally, the fact that only non-commercial facilities will be attached to the 60-foot tower, that's included also, correct?
That's included as condition number 23 of the staff report, correct.
Also, the painting in light gray, that was also included in the conditions?
Also in condition number 23, yes.
And then could you expound on his question about how this will be constructed over time?
So the applicant's required to complete a few conditions of approval prior to issuance of a zoning clearance. And once that's complete, then the applicant expects to construct as soon as they can. So it would be completed in one phase.
Okay, any other commissioner comments? Commissioner McPhail, go ahead.
Yeah, what kind of communication tower do they have right now?
So currently there is no communication tower. This tower is proposed as new.
How are they communicating? Just by landline?
This is Jim Norris. Can I weigh in?
Chair, may the applicant
Sure, go ahead.
speak to that?
This is Jim Norris, Doctor of Engineering. I'm the RF engineer on this project and the IT director for the Ventura County Fire Department. We currently have a guy wire tower on the roof of the fire station, and that is how we are receiving the fire station alerts that we currently receive as part of our emergency dispatching system. The 60-foot tower that we're requesting will ensure that these alerts are received more consistently and in any atmospheric conditions, and notwithstanding any interference or intermodulation that may be in the atmosphere at the time we're trying to alert resources out of that station. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious because I didn't see a tower at all. So I just wanted to make sure how that was working. Thank you.
Commissioner Rodriguez.
Yeah, I guess my question is for Mr. Norris. So we have an potentially approved 60-foot tower with a 21 or 22-foot whip antenna on top of that. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That's the request.
I noticed the MAC approved a 60-foot tower. Is that in conflict with that?
Because the 60-foot tower that we took to the MAC is the same as proposed today.
Okay, so the 20-foot, 22-foot whip antenna on top of that's not in conflict.
That's correct. The 22-foot whip antenna, when we took it to the MAC, was part of the proposal as well.
Okay. One other question, I guess it's for Mr. Norris. How does that relate to the public safety towers on Red Mountain and South Mountain? Is this a backup to any of those? Mr. Norris?
Yes, we have 18 public safety towers that connect up. I'm getting some feedback. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
So there are 18 mountaintop towers for connecting a public safety microwave system, which includes 13 transmit sites. We use these transmit sites to transmit our radio signals as well as our fire station alerting signals in simulcast around the county. Every fire station must be capable of receiving what we transmit from those mountaintops. So directly to your question, in this particular use case, the mountaintops are transmitters, and these receive antennas at fire stations are receive only.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Commissioner King, take it away.
Thank you, Chair White. And these questions also addressed to Mr. Norris. I think I just heard you say these are just for receiving only. Am I to understand that no transmission from this site will occur?
I'm not sure your question came through. Jim, you want to try again?
Sure. I was asking Mr. Norris if there would be any transmission of signals through that antenna.
Mr. Norris?
The
you got
antenna.
that? Okay.
Hello?
Go
Can you hear me?
ahead.
Yes.
Yes.
The antenna that we're placing on the highest point of the 60-foot structure is a receive antenna. So that it's actually a 26-foot whip, but it will be mounted approximately 4 feet below the top of the 60-foot structure, and that's how we get to 82 feet of total height, including the whip antenna. That's a receive antenna. You also see in the rendering a microwave dish, and that is both a receive and transmit of microwave signals for voice and data into the station. Our current use case does not call for transmitting land mobile radio signals from that tower using an omnidirectional antenna. However, the public safety radio system for sheriff and fire, which is a joint endeavor, is currently being redesigned, and it may be possible that that station is selected for as a transmit site. The transmit antennas are much smaller and would be lower on the tower, as engineering calls for them to be mounted 15 feet below the receive antenna. But we do not have those plans at this time.
Okay, well, let me follow up on that then. You'll forgive me for being a little nerdy, but I'm also an extra class licensed ham radio operator and have been for years. So I'm kind of familiar with radio operations. And I'm also familiar with the various mountaintop repeaters that the county public safety system uses. And it seems to me that it would be better to disclose to the public when you met with the MAC that there is some opportunity for the site to be more than a receive only, that we ought to disclose that, that whip antenna is a little overkill. I understand at those frequencies, it's basically line of sight. but it would probably not be needed unless the repeater stations went down. Nevertheless, anything that promotes public safety, I'm going to agree to. However, want to make sure that the public is aware that this is being overbuilt so that it has the capacity to be used for more than a receive-only station. So that there's nobody comes back in 5 or 10 years if we upgrade systems and says, well, wait a second, you never told me about that. I just wanted to make.
I appreciate everything you're saying, and I agree with most of what you said. I take issue with that it's being overbuilt for the purpose of adding transmit. The opportunity is there because of the height and engineering of the tower, but we specifically require the 60-foot height with a 26-foot Station Master whip antenna mounted at the 56-foot of elevation on that tower in order to receive our VHF alerts on the worst day and in the worst case.
Okay, well, you answered another question I had that I wasn't going to ask because it's way too nerdy, and that had to do with the frequency and the wavelengths that were involved, because that's how you calculate antenna height and length and so forth. The only other thing I want to comment, and it doesn't relate to Mr. Norris at all, just amusing that Ventura County Fire Protection District is a part of the county. The planning department is part of the county. And I was amused as I read the conditions at the number of boilerplate conditions that relate to financial responsibility and fees being charged to process the CUP application, which is the same requirements that the general public would be required to meet if they were submitting an application for a CUP. I just find it amusing that no money is really going to change hands. There's going to be journal vouchers moving money from one department's budget to another department's budget, which makes all of those conditions maybe superfluous, but for consistency, I understand why they're there.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner King. Commissioner Rodriguez, you were waving your hand there.
Megan, the hearing room is muted. Can you unmute?
Go ahead.
Richard or me?
Go ahead, Phil. I'll follow you.
Jim, to answer your question, back when I was the ag commissioner, way back when, the county passed a policy that all departments should be 100% revenue offset if possible. That's why money will exchange hands.
Yeah, well, I understand that. I just want to make sure the public knows it's not real money. It's just journal voucher money.
But they're required to charge.
No, I understand that.
Okay, any other commissioner comments? Commissioner
Yeah, I have one.
Rodriguez, go ahead.
Do I have the floor? I have a comment on the communications. Excuse me. Since Mr. Norris indicates that there's movement afoot to do some major structuring of the communication for public safety across the board, that this site will potentially be able to transmit. If I understood him correctly, is that correct?
I don't know that it would be selected. The discussion about the antenna being a receive antenna, I wanted to be clear that that was the purpose that we're asking this antenna for, and that it could not would not be used for transmit, and that we would use a different kind of antenna were we to transmit. There are no current plans to transmit from that site.
Understood. But you did mention that there's planning going on to create more dispatch or transmission capabilities, so that would include or potentially include this station. Is that correct?
What we have ongoing right now is a life cycle upgrade of fire and sheriff public safety radio communication systems. And we are currently in discussions with the vendors to explore possibilities. We believe we're staying in the VHF band. And if we stay in the VHF band, it is highly unlikely, I'll say it is unnecessary to use any low-lying stations for transmit. So all of our transmit would stay up on the mountaintops. 15, 20 years from now, we may move into another band, such as the 700, 800 megahertz band, in which case it might be necessary to transmit from some low-lying facilities. In that case, all county facilities would be, with towers, would be considered as candidates, and this would be one such candidate. I think it's a very low probability even then in the future. It certainly is not on the table right now. And I only mentioned it in juxtaposition of what a receive antenna does for the understanding of the gentleman who was asking about the purpose of the antenna on the top of the tower.
Okay. Your answer kind of led into my question and my concern. Because if that happens 20 years down the road, that's going to be beyond the authority of this CUP without coming back to the commission. And it would have to, fire service have to come back to modification of the CUP that they're requesting today.
That's correct. There would be a lot of things we'd have to come back to put in a 700, 800 megahertz system, because there would be extensive civil engineering involved with a transition from the VHF band to the 700-800 band. So this would be but one example of that.
Okay, thank you.
And again, if I may, sir, just to emphasize my mention of the transmit was just by way of, was not intended to telegraph any plans to do so. It was just to provide some juxtaposition to the functionality of a receive antenna on the top.
No,
what we're requesting today. Thank you.
I understand and appreciate your information, but we're talking about a 30-year CUP that potentially will be impacted if this happens. And my concern is that we come back to address this issue if and when that happens, or prior to it happening. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. And any other commissioner comments? Okay, so let's go to the email for public comments. Do we have any public comments?
Chair White, I know that you've had some dialogue here with Mr. Norris, but I was wondering if we might also invite Mr. David Kirby as applicant, if he has any quick words.
Hello, thank you. This is Dave Kirby. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. It's exactly why we brought Jim Norris on, as he's able to provide all those questions and answers that we anticipated coming. I have no discussion items at this time. Unless there's further questions, I have additional staff to help me address those. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to pause here for a few minutes to check the email. John had already put it up there, so I'm assuming that anyone interested has had the opportunity to see where they could send an email. So we'll take a few minute pause to see if anything has come in, and if not, then we will be prepared to close the public hearing. Okay, the clerk reports that no emails have been received with public comments, so without objection, we'll close the public hearing and proceed to Planning Commission deliberations. Anyone like to speak? Commissioner Adukas.
Is Mr. McPhail out of range? I just saw him step up from his chair. I was ready to make a motion.
I'm sorry, I
And
didn't catch
Commissioner
the question.
stepped away as well.
It looks like we lost Commissioner McPhail.
Okay. Got it. So we'll pause a little longer.
Okay, are we ready to go? Chair White, are we?
Okay, everybody's back in. I see all 5 heads. So let's go to Planning Commission deliberations on this CUP. Anyone care to speak? Commissioner Adukas.
Yeah, I'm ready to make a motion to. I'm hearing feedback.
Go ahead.
I would move approval of staff's recommendations with the inclusion of the comment that was read into the record by Mr. Kessler.
Is there a second? Commissioner
made it.
King. Is there a second to the motion?
I seconded already.
Okay, I didn't hear you. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? The clerk is clear on what the motion is.
Yes, it's to improve staff excuse me. Okay, there we go. Approve staff recommendations to include the staff PowerPoint and the comment letter as received.
Okay. Clerk will call the roll on the motion.
Chair White,
Aye.
Commissioner Idukas,
Aye.
Commissioner McPhail,
Aye.
Commissioner King,
Aye.
Commissioner Rodriguez.
Aye.
Great. All right, let's see if this works here.
The motion is approved unanimously. By the way, I'd like to interject here that we may, in the future, where we modify staff recommendations, want to put up on the screen the actual wording of motions. Maybe we talk about that in conjunction with the next item on the agenda. Let's move to that next item, which is a discussion of time limits during public comment period for agenda items that generate numerous public speaker requests. And I would refer to the planning director, Mr. Ward, for this item.
Oops, hold on, make sure. Thank you, Chair White and Commissioners. Recently, I had communication with both the chair and the vice chair, looking ahead on the management of our agendas coming up during the summer months. We have several items coming that are going to be of public interest, potentially a lot of public interest. And so I was discussing with the chair and vice chair how to conduct those hearings if we have numerous speakers. In light of the COVID situation as well, we were talking about the technology of using the Zoom, including the abilities for phone call using Zoom. And at the time, we did not know whether the hearing rooms would be open yet. That actually is progressing with the Board of Supervisors as of next week, that the hearing room would be open with social distancing protocols and other methods to manage the hearing here at our building. Nonetheless, we would still anticipate using Zoom and other means to allow for the public to engage with us. So in our discussions with the chair and vice chair about timing of how many speakers we have and whether there need to be methods to limit some amount of time per speaker, and what ways the chair and vice chair would like to proceed in that light. I will remind for all the commissioners that we do have procedural rules for the conduct of land use hearings that was established by the Board of Supervisors in 1976. Those still apply, and it does talk about time limits, and it does give that authority to the chair to moderate and facilitate if timed speakers are necessary in light of certain agenda items where there's a strong public interest. So that is the process that is in your procedures today. Both the chair and vice chair wanted to bring that forward to make sure all the commissioners were aware of that current rule and time limits and how you would like to proceed during these summer months when we do have many items that will generate public interest.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ward. Any comments from commissioners on the length of public testimony? I know when Commissioner King and I met with Mr. Ward to talk about this issue and visualize that we might have, let's say 50 speakers wanting to present information on a particular item, that it does make sense to limit the number of minutes that each person could speak. I kind of focused in on 3 minutes. I know that we don't like to restrict the amount of time that people present testimony and opinion, but the reality is that there need to be at times some limits on this. I would ask other commissioners what their thoughts are. Commissioner McPhail.
Yeah, I think if we have a boardroom fairly full of people, 3 minutes is enough time, because as we all know from previous experience, a lot of people repeat what somebody else has already said. And if we limit it to 3 minutes, that still gives them the opportunity to repeat what somebody else has said. But we don't have to sit there for 5 minutes or whatever listening to repeats all the time, because we do have a lot of people who have testified that they're repeating what the person just before them has said or whatever. So I think the chair also has the opportunity to mention at the beginning of the public hearing that if you want to ditto somebody else's comments, it would be nice if there's a lot of people, if they would just say, yes, I agree with the previous comments.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Idukas.
I think 3 minutes is really short. I think that previously, the Planning Commission did have limits. When I became chair, I would allow people to speak as long as they wanted to speak. I think the longest we ever had someone speak was a half an hour. And that was very, very unusual. Most people are done after 5 minutes. And I think that even if they do repeat, they put their own spin on it. And I think they have a right to speak. And I don't think that should be curtailed unreasonably. I think 5 minutes is what most people need to say their piece and feel that we are listening and that they have been heard. So I think that the most important thing is that we are fair and that people who are opposed or in support of a particular item all feel that they have had a fair chance to express themselves. And structurally, we used to have it, everybody in favor got to speak and then everybody opposed got to speak. And people thought that that was terribly unfair. They also thought it was unfair that people who were in support of an applicant, say, all got to speak first because they got there early because they were organized. So I think there's a lot of discretion and judgment that the chair has. And the most important thing is that, and I think everybody agrees, that we be fair and that we listen, because after all, these are hearings.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner King.
Thank you, Chair White. I want to point out that one of the most important things I learned since coming on this planning commission, I learned from my colleague, Commissioner Dukas, and that is that the purpose of a public hearing is for the public to be able to speak and for the commission to listen carefully, thoughtfully, and fairly. I think 3 minutes is a short amount of time. However, time is not unlimited. I'd like to suggest that we start with 5 minutes as a recommended limit, and that could be metered by the chair. However, if the number of people requesting to speak is much longer than, if we have 50 or 75 people wanting to speak, then the commission at that point, before we start taking public testimony, could agree to cut it down to 3. But I think I personally would favor 5 minutes unless we had an inordinate number of people. And even then, I think the chair has to exercise.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner King. Commissioner Rodriguez.
Yeah, I concur with Nora and Commissioner King. That 3 to 5 minute.
Nora and Commissioner King?
I'm sorry, did I say Nora? Commissioner Dukas. Commissioner King. I think that 3 to 5 minute window is appropriate. From my experience, and I tend to let people talk, they go, even with the timer on, they go beyond the 2 minutes quite often. So if we can start trying to hold it between 3 and 5, I think that would work for the shorter people. Obviously, what we kind of come up with doesn't impact the applicant or the respondent. And as I recall, we don't have a time clock on them. Is that correct?
I think it is correct that when we have the applicant and we have the staff, there's no time limit on their presentations, and I think that's appropriate. Having attended some planning commission meetings and observed some board of supervisors meetings, the reality is in a very large crowd, the Board of Supervisors routinely will set limits according to the amount of time in the day to get the hearing taken care of. I'm certainly in
But they have
favor
a
of
lot
hearing
more.
everybody out. I don't believe in putting limits on anybody's freedom of speech. But I think it's worth noting that we are likely to run into some circumstances where there are a lot of people wanting to speak, and therefore limits are in order. Maybe 5 minutes in general is a good rule of thumb, with going to 3 if it's a huge crowd. Any other comments from commissioners? Commissioner Dukas.
Thank you. Comparing ourselves to the board handles 100 times what we handle. So it's entirely appropriate for the Board of Supervisors to have limits. Generally speaking, our agenda 90% of the time handles one item. So, and we're kind of a clearinghouse for the Board of Supervisors. I believe that having a lot of speakers is a wonderful problem to have.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Mr. Ward, do you want to add anything to the discussion here? Okay, Commissioner McPhail, go ahead.
Your mic is muted.
I agree with everything that Commissioner Dukas has said, but yeah, a lot of times we only have one item. Sometimes we have 2 items. Sometimes we have 3 items. But the items that are coming up starting June 26th are exceptionally controversial items. And there's going to be a lot of speakers. My main concern is whether it's 5 minutes or 3, that's up to the chair. But if we can meet at the government center, I would suggest controversial items be put on until we can. Because Zoom is not going to work with 50 or 75 speakers. It's just not going to work.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Don't see any other waving hands. Mr. Ward.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioners. I think your dialogue about how to conduct the hearing, limiting the time if necessary, and that flexibility when you see how many requests to speak that you receive makes a lot of sense from staff's perspective, so I'm supportive of that approach. At this point, the hearing rooms will be reopening next week. So we would be anticipating that some individuals will elect to come to the hearing and sit socially distanced here in the hearing room, as well as other areas outside the hearing room to be waiting, again, at appropriately socially distanced seating areas. So we are anticipating that. The Board of Supervisors is as well, and we will be able to facilitate that. I do believe some individuals will still elect to use the Zoom method to communicate, and we are developing the phone component of that. And there's been a lot of staff work and technical work with our IT folks, looking at best management practices from other of our sister communities here, in particular, the city of Thousand Oaks. So we will have the methods to conduct and receive those public comments directly by phone or video for those that choose to do so. So it is a lot of orchestration, no doubt, a lot of production work with Megan and others, which we really appreciate, so that we can accommodate and engage the public, particularly on these important items that are coming forward to your commission during the summer months. So I am hopeful that we will be able to still conduct the multiple methods of communication and still lead to your successful deliberations and direction on the projects.
Okay, thank you. When Commissioner King and I met with the planning director to talk about this item, we also talked about the importance of being very clear on motions that the commission makes. Megan is the one on the hook to summarize these things, and so we need to be very explicit as to what our motions say and what we're voting on and passing as a group. And the suggestion was made by the planning director that we do as we did in the early general plan update process, that we actually put the text of motions that differ from staff recommendation up on the wall and on the screen and do live edits. So Director Ward, would you please comment on that, on your thoughts?
Correct. The PowerPoint presentations by staff on agenda items typically end with that recommendation slide that mirrors what's in your staff report. Or if there's been some additional change from the publication of the staff report that we know about in advance, we will try to incorporate that into the presentation to help focus the public and your deliberations going forward. But at the very end, we can still have it up on screen and the ability to make adjustments per direction that the commissioners make in their motion. So it's really clear, even though it might take a minute or two to type up whatever might be necessary, that is well-served time to get it up there. Everyone's able to look at the screen and then take your vote.
Does everybody kind of understand that? So that there's, I know when we were doing the general plan update, we had some very long, complicated motions, and Megan and staff struggled with writing that down and summarizing it, and had to listen to the tapes over and over again. So to smooth that out, I think the suggestion to have the live edits up on the screen will solve that problem, and hopefully everybody's in agreement to do it that way. Okay, anything else on this item? Seeing none, we'll move to item number 8, discussion report by the planning director on board actions and other matters.
Thank you, Chair White and commissioners. Other than talking just now about the public hearing rooms opening up, that is the latest news as of just a day or two ago. So we are working on that. We've modified our noticing for the upcoming items for your commission just in the nick of time. So that was helpful to get that in. And we will have the staffing and the procedures to help accommodate those who may decide to come to the hearing room itself. I don't have any other information necessarily from the board's actions at this point. Looking ahead on your calendar, we do have 2 items on the June 25th hearing date. One of them is a deferral by the planning director to your commission on a project, Crestview Mutual Water Company, which includes an abandonment of existing water production, storage facility, and the creation of a new well. And then I also have a denial of a zone clearance by the planning director for a single-family home. So those will be your 2 items on the 25th. Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda would be matters that the Planning Commission may wish to introduce. Do any planning commissioners have things they would like to bring up? I see one waving hand, Commissioner King.
Thank you, Chairman White. I got a call from one of Supervisor Hubert's staff inquiring about the hemp growing ordinance or some new revised ordinance. And he asked if we had seen it, and I said it's not even on our schedule. And then I got to thinking about it, and so this question is for Director Ward. Is that in the commission's purview, or does that go someplace else?
Thank you, Vice Chair King. Hemp is handled with the Ag Commissioner's office, so it is not an item that's before you, under your authority or under our zoning ordinance.
Okay, then I'll give that answer to the supervisor's staff.
Okay, I have a waving hand. Did you wish to speak, Jeff?
I did, thank you. Just to elaborate on the hemp ordinance, Jeff Barnes, County Council. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
The hemp ordinance is a bit complicated because Director Ward is correct. The Agricultural Commissioner is the one that's preparing the ordinance. Because it affects the use of land, obviously, it's considered a land use ordinance. It's not going to live in the zoning ordinance, but under state planning law, it still is considered a land use ordinance. And so it will at some point be coming before your planning commission. But again, it's being developed by the Ag Commissioner. And I'm not sure the timing on that, but I just want to clarify that point.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Barnes. Anybody else have anything they wish to bring up? Commissioner Oudoukos.
This reminds me, there's an initiative going around about this kind of thing. Mr. Ward, do you know anything about that?
This is Jeff again. I know about it just because County Council's office works with the elections, the county elections department in preparing a summary of initiative petitions. So this is an initiative petition that was not initiated by the county. And there was some misunderstanding, I hear, that just because the County Council's office was complying with its duty to prepare a summary of the ordinance, some thought that this was being initiated by the county, which is not the case. It's a private initiative that would allow a limited amount of growing of cannabis, which is different than hemp because cannabis is used, for the drug, in existing greenhouses in the county, and it would also allow manufacturing. So basically taking the plant and turning it into a drug, so to speak, in the county as well. It would not allow retail sales in the unincorporated county. And so because it's an initiative petition, if they get enough votes to put it on the ballot, and so that's the stage we're in. I understand they're collecting signatures. I'm sorry, I said votes. I meant signatures to get it put on the ballot. And so that's why I received one in the mail at my house. And so if they get enough signatures on their petition, then it goes on the ballot, and it's county-wide. It's not just the unincorporated area. So if they get a majority vote county-wide, then the initiative would pass. And this is exactly, well, not exactly the process that SORA went through, but I won't get into the details there. But if it does pass, then the county would set up a permitting program to implement the initiative, and it would be basically a ministerial permitting program that I believe would be run out of the CEO's office and not the planning division. And so there would be basically ministerial check-the-box type requirements for establishing the cannabis operations that were permitted by the initiative. So anyways, that's maybe more than you wanted to know, but I did read it and I know most of the details.
I appreciate that. I wonder what the Board of Supervisors is going to do in response, because they will get their signatures.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Dukas. Any other comments from commissioners or staff? If not, without objection, the meeting is adjourned.
Good job.
See you next week or next time.